This is Dave Monk, Prairie Monk, WEFT, Champaign 90.1 on your FM dial, and
I'm Bill Saylor, substitute engineering today for Dave Wazzani.
But he'd been with me for a long, long time.
Yeah.
As a co-host.
And now through the magic of video, I'm about to appear on Dave's side of the desk so I can talk to you there.
Yes, so why don't you come around? Bill often brings a little something else to the program. And
ta-da! It was raining.
Oh, yes, I just talked to Becky's sister.
Raining.
And they had electricity off all night.
We did not have that bad. It's been a challenging summer, and lots of colleagues and whatnot have had flooded basements.
Oh, yes, next door. I have a flooded basement.
You have a flooded basement?
Mm-hmm.
Is it backing up from the storm sewer?
Yes.
Is that the issue?
Yes, well, it used to have an alleyway behind, and all the water used to run off the roofs into the alleyway and out. But then the alleyway was built over, so the water doesn't have anywhere to go. And there are no maps, and it's old.
Yeah.
And so it accumulates, and it goes into anyone's basement.
Yes, it's known as distributed detention.
Yes.
A lot of people said, I've lived here 17 years and I haven't had this happen. But it'll happen. You don't get 5-inch rains, 24-hour rains every year either. With
climate change, it's going to happen more. You're going to get variations, and you're going to get droughts and rain, and it's going to be more variable.
So, challenging year, and I got a bit of a roof leak, not a basement leak. But when this started earlier, a month or two ago, before the big rain, we had another, inch and a half rain. I was driving to work, and I'll put a video in of this. I was driving to work. I drove down State Street to the end of State Street at the south end where that little sort of commerce center at Fox Drive is. And there's this fountain of chocolate in front of me. There's this little basin that takes a runoff, and there's an aerator there, and it's a fountain, And it was chocolate.
Yes, with
what is this? Well, what it was is the next property up is where the car dealer went out, and it's going to be redeveloped as a grocery store and hardware store and whatnot. Yeah. But the dirt is all bare now, and you can have your 2-foot silt fence or whatever, but all that clay, lossy, silty soil got around the fence and down or whatever it was. And this was, I think, before the 5-inch rain. But, it was all for a whole week cycling through that pump and shooting in the air, and finally got wise and turned it off.
The site Bill is talking about is on Hillcrest, so it's a morainic material, and it's quite a bit of sand in it. So it's the sort of material we harvest for road improvements that I'll talk about later.
I also, germane to the show, I guess, while I'm recycling material, this is a tree that's not a tree.
It's been paper mache.
Yeah, it's brown.
Brown paper.
Brown paper, painted over. Behind it, some vinyl, but it's been used at least once for something else.
Sure. Hold it up. Sure. The audience has to know that we're on radio, but we're also
we're on the radio holding this up.
On television, and we're on YouTube. So
am I?
Come this way a little bit because
I think I'm on. Okay. I'm. My new life here is theater for the Champaign.
Somebody put their face through this, or?
Well, that was the idea. I'm not sure we ever got to that. There's a whole. It's a tree trunk, and this was about. Well, it stands 4.5 feet tall, but it was a third of what the tree was on stage. Because if you're doing something on the Virginia, which is where it was, you've got a lot of space to fill. Yes, especially wide. You've got 40 feet to fill if you're going to fill it. So anyway, this was originally part of a can, a 7-foot high can, and community theater is one of the original recyclers. We reuse our screws until they won't go in anymore.
Bill finds artifacts.
Sort them out. Yeah, including Dave's warehouse.
Yes.
So I got some things to come
thank
back to
you
you.
for bringing
We'll
that.
use the next time. But it's a nice backdrop.
You have a
We should
little
leave
box
it.
here. I don't know what that is. What is that about?
All right, so next topic is I have a little box here, and in the box is a battery. There's a key, so I don't lose the key in the box. Unfortunately, it's shaped like a little coffin, because what's in the box is a 56-volt lithium-ion battery for the new mower that I bought.
Ah.
And I tried to salvage my old mowers. I tried, and various mechanical failures, and I wasn't into cleaning,
So
taking apart a carburetor to
How much
clean
does
it out.
the new battery cost?
I don't know what the battery costs, like $100, but the lawnmower was a $500 lawnmower.
Uh-huh.
So it's your top line lawnmower. It was electric. It's you plug in the battery, it charges in a half hour, and then you get about 45 minutes worth of cutting out of it.
Uh-huh.
So it's
No cords.
no cords, no emissions.
Oh,
Well,
but
which is-
that's sort of a misnomer because
Well, sort of,
somewhere
yes.
the electricity it has to be produced, and
That's true. So this is a debatable item. What about the life cycle costs, and what about it when you charge the battery? What's happening? At least what's happening is the emissions control is centralized, and it
yes,
exists.
so you know that
as opposed to
the
on a
coal burner
lawnmower.
is somewhere out there, and it's producing carbon and whatever, mercury and a few other things, and we're still working on the environment. So electricity and electric cars give you this false feeling of
Clean.
cleanness.
Yeah.
But the cleanness is going on. The dirt is going on outside. It's not in my backyard. NIMBY is the acronym.
But again, at least it's a place where it'll somewhat get scrubbed. And like trying to compare your MPG of your electric car to a gas car, I don't know how it comes out in the net. We can research
there
that.
are real advantages because you don't have to have a heavy 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, or 8-cylinder car.
No, and the lawnmower has its limitations. It's I've only cut a few times so far, but I figured I'd make the leap. But I did some shopping around. I thought about basic made in the U.S. gas lawnmower to replace what I had. But I figured I'd give it a try. It's recommended that the grass be dry when you cut it. Definitely not cut in the rain, but that's for a reason with a battery. And sure enough, it doesn't have the oomph to chuck the grass out of the chute or whatever. It comes with a bag. I haven't tried the bag.
And wetness makes it gum up.
Yes, it does. And I haven't tried the tricks like spraying super slick stuff under the cavity or whatever, whatever you call it, where the grass is cut. But so far, so good. If I don't do it too early, the grass isn't too dewy, and I let it dry out. Now we've had weather to at times cooperate with that this season.
Yes.
So I've done that. I've also found myself shutting the thing off and pulling the grass out of the chute because there's too much there. So if you have the time to mow a little more frequently, and if you don't have a huge yard, I can just barely get my lawn done in the 45 minutes or whatever it is. But it is a fast charge, and the battery's less of an impact than some of the predecessor types.
So what other things have you?
I'll also add, because I took pictures of it, what I don't like about the mower is it's plastic, but it's certainly not the only plastic mower out there anymore.
Yes.
There's something, but then it's easy enough to push around the yard too. So a third of the weight's in this battery in front of ourselves. And then it folds up, and you can put it vertical, you can hang it on the wall, you can let it sit vertical.
Oh, it's not a 4-wheeler, it's a...
No, it's a 4-wheeler.
Okay.
But it's just designed right so that you can fold up the arms, you can tilt it and have it stand on its end. And then if you need to, after you cut the grass, take a stick and get the grass out of there.
Up the side of a tree?
I haven't tried that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I haven't. The pulley head. It feels like an overgrown weed whacker. It sounds like one, but it's a blade, and it does cut. And they sell weed whacker tools. Anyway, the brand, strangely enough, is EGO. Ego. I don't know if this is like a joke on the consumer, but that's what's on it. Home Depot, it seems to be their brand at the moment, or that's who the distributor is. So from a Consumer Reports point of view, there you go.
Okay, well, we have a few other recyclable stories. Bill's talking about plastic. Right behind me, for those who can't see it, we have a box that's about the size of a summer cooler. But it's what ice cream is moved around the country in, and steaks and things like that. And this is styrofoam, and it's all air, and it's the sort of thing we cannot recycle easily, because it's very costly to take a semi-trailer load of styrofoam to Indianapolis to find something that will melt this down. It's air. So what do you do with it for salvage? You probably have to chop it up into little pieces in order to put it in the landfill, because the recycling people haven't got to that point yet. So that's one. Bill's sitting next to a
I don't know what this is.
like little stove, and this comes out of the garbage.
It's
and I checked
broiler.
it out.
Oh, it's not heavy.
It works.
It's all metal.
And it's just not a very expensive one, but it's all metal. It shouldn't go into the garbage.
So it's not a microwave where you got specialized parts to recycle.
Yeah.
It's just a toaster oven.
Yeah. Then I pulled out this week. I pulled out a full-size computer. It was outdated, so I took it to recycle. But also took a laptop, which probably was also old. But at this time of the year, people leave town and it's they throw out things. Bill just was moving another piece of furniture here, which is a chair. Bring the chair over, and for those who see us on YouTube,
sound of the chair doesn't make any noise.
No, it's just worn out. It's got a worn out seat.
Well, that's.
But I weighed this. It's 16 pounds of steel into the garbage. So I watched an electrician work, and what did he have? He had leftover copper wire. Where did he put it? Right into the garbage. I said, why did you throw the copper out like that? Oh, I have no use for it. And it's like he's not thinking about taking it back to the office and accumulating pieces of copper. But so these are things that I've been working with this week. On the more happy side, we go to the farmer's market and we get zinnias, and we also have fruit and vegetables at the farmer's market, and people. We get to work with people. So Bill has something else here. What's he got?
I have three things. I think I said them all. Well, I've got a piece of fire made out of a nylon, recycled out of nylon, and a coat hanger. So I'm going to leave this in the
view. Okay, so we have flowers
and go operate the board.
The
there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, simulated flame here.
Yeah.
But
the little pocket prairie is doing well. Visitors are going there. We've had people from overseas and other states come in and visit with us. I want to say something about South 45. For those of you who have been calling me and inquiring, South 45 has been designated as a site for power towers. Some people call them stanchions, some people call them other things, but basically they're to carry very heavy voltage power lines. And this is part of reticulation across the state. The grids have gotten old, and there's more power being moved through them, and if you do that, the copper wires that are involved overheat, and when they heat, they expand, and they drop down, and they can short to trees. So the area has been mowed. We've talked about that. It was a mower that can go to the top of a tree and go down to its roots. And the prairie is saying thank you as a result of that, because there weren't any trees on the prairie, and these are all trees that are resulting from disturbance. Then the power poles, however, are like 100 feet high. They're really high. And they need a pedestal that is 10 feet deep. So if you put a stone on a prairie and leave it for a few years, it gradually drops into the prairie because you're on the backside of a moraine, and it's kind of soft and sloppy. And so you need at least a 10-foot piece of concrete that's 6 feet in diameter or 5 feet in diameter, and then you support on that sections of a steel tower that start out wider and get narrower. And there's probably about 40 bolts holding that down. And there's a row of 6 of those on our prairie at Savoy. So often the corridors are worked linearly, so that means trucks and hi-hos and cranes work their way along the prairie, and we beg not to do that. So what Ameren is doing is putting in culverts. So for those of you who don't remember this, the road has been widened from 2 lanes to 3 lanes to 5 lanes, and on the side that's east near to these towers, there's a ditch, and the ditch is mainly grasses and not it's replacement prairie, so it's not, we're not losing a lot of prairie there. So they've put down a carpet of plastic and put tons and tons of gravel on each culvert. They've made a culvert that's just probably about 50 feet wide. It accesses a conservation easement of 60 feet by 60 feet. That's pretty huge, and there's prairie, and very good prairie in some of those places. We will lose the prairie where the pedestal is, so we get to do that. It's not happening right away, but when it happens, the portion that is good prairie, that is down to the ditch, up to the ditch, and then good prairie, will be covered with mats that are like about 10 foot by 10 foot, and they're put down on top of the prairie. We don't have the labor and ability to move the plants, and they're so deep-rooted. We might move 1 or 2 like New Jersey tea, things like that, or clovers. But basically, we'll put down mats that Cletrax and big road tires from cranes can use without falling into the soft soil, and when they're done, those will be moved off. So I appreciate that. And if you're wondering what goes, stop and walk over and have a look and see that sometimes you have to deal with massive things when things are happening down it.
So I saw those culverts out there. So you're talking about a culvert crossing that's almost like a big driveway that the vehicle can get into with, and then you're losing a 60-foot square footprint for each tower?
Yes, that's an easement. So the vehicles will go on it. The vehicles with huge rubber tires are going to sink into it more than if you have Cletrax. The Cletrax are.
Especially if it doesn't dry out this season.
Yes. Hopefully they do things according to the biology. Already they mowed early so that they didn't get bird nested and creatures. So that was very cooperative. And they may mow the specific site that is the construction easement. But they're going to leave that for a while. They've got a stack of these pallets to go down in the future. And so that's good. Right down there I find a little group of teasel. Teasel is one of these...
Thought it looked weedy.
One of these plants that's a wonderful dried arrangement. It looks nice. It was used to tease wool, but it has a million seeds, and if you're near a cemetery or place where there's flower arrangements, you're going to have a spread of this plant. The state even has a teasel detail which goes out with a 5-ton truck with herbicide to get the teasel. So we have to be very careful in Rantoul where we have some teasel on a good prairie, because if the people who are doing teasel only know about teasel, they don't recognize the prairie underneath. So I pulled out probably about 30 teasel plants. I cut them off. Didn't have any herbicide. We traditionally take herbicide and spot herbicide the teasel. It's a biennial, so it takes 2 years for it to grow. So these seeds are just now nicely ripening. And so I brought them home and I cut all the seed heads off the vegetation, and I could recycle the vegetation. I'm not quite sure what to do with these things yet. What I usually do is let them dry and then burn them, incinerate them. It's not very fair to send these things to the landfill where they will grow quite well and be a nuisance. And from a visual point of view, anyone that knows about biology or agriculture will recognize the teasel plants in a very visible place. So I was glad to get rid of those.
Let's let people know it's about 1:30. You're tuned to WEFT Champaign, 90.1 FM. You're listening to the Prairie Monk program. That's Dave Monk. I'm Bill Saylor, just about to go engineer the board once again. This is your weekly program of environmental discussion.
We actually were on Windsor Road, where you helped me early on.
That's where I met Dave. Well, I met. Where did I met? Well, all my friends knew about you when I came to town.
Yeah.
And Dave fetched us from outside the original Blind Pig, which at that time was not serving alcohol. They're just serving lunch.
Yes. It was a teenager thing, I think.
Well, I was just getting started as to what it would be. And I said, you want to pull some plants for $5 an hour? And sure, because we were all hippies then.
So we had a ditch that had 45-degree angle. And the Department of... 7 different agencies were concerned putting Windsor Road in, which was destined to be a ring road around Champaign, on the south side of Champaign. It hasn't eventuated as a ring road because the development got involved first. So now the ring road is coming off 57 with a road 1 mile south, the Curtis Road. But that road was widening. It took the railroad line up and moved it.
It's a section road, and at the time it didn't go through. So between First Street and Neal Street, it had just gone in. This is south of the Fire Training Institute.
So even from Ray Street in Urbana right through was a new road. And the drainage ditch alongside it was a sort of wiggly-woggly ditch that went through the fire department.
Where the Fire Institute is now.
Yes.
If you look at old maps, you'll see it look through.
So they
cut through.
Made square bends, which are not really what water flow enjoys. But and it went down along parallel to the new Windsor Road. And I think if I remember rightly, we had a 3-foot carp there. It had fish in this. When it rained and it backed up, it's part of the Ombra. This water runs off to the Ombra and down in front of Yankee Ridge Moraine, where water comes off of the Yankee Ridge also.
So this was the early 90s.
Yes.
Which had some wet years also.
Well, these 7 agencies got together and they tried to grow brome grass on the side of this 45-degree angle, which was mainly clay, and they said they couldn't get it to grow. Brome grass usually grows in about 10 days if you're lucky. And it's instant gratification. Well, they approached us to, could we do something with prairie because it has deep roots? And I said yes, but it wasn't a matter of 10 days. They wanted to know how long it would take, and I said, well, give me 10 years. It's a slow-growing thing. Some plants will come within a season, and some will come in 5 years, some in 10 years. They will be there. You just won't see the roots growing first, and then eventually you'll see, oh, there's culvus root. Oh, yeah. It really did grow. So the plants are growing down there quite well. Got some invasive trees, but there was people from the city who were working with that and working with a little award-winning prairie on the corner of Neil and Windsor Road, which got $3,000 for the award, and then they got to put it in, and it's tenderly cared for by the city of Champaign. And likewise, the whole corridor is worked by Champaign. When the 7 agencies finish the job, the details of the road are given to the likely in perpetuity bodies, like Champaign for Champaign stuff, Urbana for Urbana stuff, that sort of thing. But the philosophy at the moment was that a 12-foot piece be mown on the prairie we planted out to the road. It's in a situation where you wouldn't think that the prairie would invade the road, but that was a thought. Well, I have to say that this philosophy has changed, and the 12 feet is no longer mown, and it's growing cytogrammar and a whole bunch of other things. So we walked that, and we were pleased. And we hope that it will continue as a no-mow policy. No-mow policies are difficult because people feel happy with neatness and tidiness, and they can see when and where you mow.
Right next door is the backyard of the water survey where I work.
Yes.
And that's gone no-mow, but it's not planted as anything. It's just not mown. It has kind of lawn before. So there's milkweed and the butterflies that like it here and there. What
you do is you get some seed and spread it around, and it will grow. It's called dipsy doodling.
Well, they still mow sometimes. There's some equipment out in the middle, so they mow some lanes out there. But I don't know what they were doing this year. Of course, they got to mow more often this year because it is kind of wet. They still got the huge 20-foot tractors out mowing little lanes around, so it's kind of do-it-yourself landscape architecture, I guess. Yes. I got a good picture of that. I'll put it in there, too. Okay, this is 90.1 FM WEFT. I'm going to zoom in on you. Unless
I'm looking through my notes.
All right. Well, that's a good time to...
One little piece there where I pulled out a 4-foot by 2 feet terrarium out of one trash can and put it on a little stump outside our place. And to help me, within a half an hour, somebody had called me up. The person who helped me out with it was over doing some things helpful things with the prairie. And so somebody else came and picked up the terrarium. So it was recycled. And so that pleases me a lot. So just picking up a few of the things we might have missed here. I did want to say congratulations to Becky Zistica for her birthday. She helped with ERAS and Heartland Pathways many, many times over. Okay, I want to go to 150 because 150 is being remodeled. And for those of you who have computer access, last week's debate, which included quite a bit about 150, is up on YouTube, so you can get it. Go to YouTube, the Prairie Monk or Prairie Monk, and it will. You'll see our debate. What's happening is Route 150 is being widened by not a lot, just a foot or so, but it's enough to require a change in the ditch along the side. The area adjacent is a railroad line. Used to be a Conrail line, New York Central before that, and it's going to be a rail trail to Kickapoo State Park. That is being developed at the moment. It's being planned at the moment, but the road development has come much faster, and from Urbana to Danville, I don't know whether the road will be developed that far. The road portion that's funded with probably about $6 million at the moment is between Urbana and St. Joe, the nearest bigger town. And they have purchased an easement from the CSX, the railroad company that bought the Kickapoo Trail. What happened was that many years ago, we took out an interim trail use agreement on that line, and Champaign County Conservation and Design and Conservation Corporation took over the fundraising for that. Didn't quite make it, so CSX bought it. CSX is a major railroad line, and despite what people don't realize is that this railroad bed is part of a corridor between Indianapolis and Bloomington, which meets the fast track. It's not really a real fast track. It's 110, 114 mile an hour, but it's dual trackage from Chicago to St. Louis. So this has railroad connotations. We as Heartland Pathways felt that we wanted a range of people involved, more than just recreation. We needed the railroaders. We needed the farmers that felt like they get the soil back. We needed a range of people. The debate there was that if you have to create a new group, you don't have in perpetuity because you haven't been around very long. You've got to establish yourself. You've got to establish a tax base, perhaps. So it's easier to go to existing forest preserves and conservation districts that are so established. They had to go through their establishment years and years ago. But what that did when they took that to more a recreational site rather than a prairie site. So the plans for the road are kind of considerable. For those who can see this on YouTube and television, this is like 100 pages of plan. They're on 17-inch paper. The originals are probably 4 feet long. Each piece of plan, each page has a lot of information. This is sort of like 10 years' work. So the unfortunate thing here is that we on the prairie side have been somewhat left out of this plan. And the first thing you see is that the easements on the side of the road are being readied for taking being a technical term, so that the soil can be incorporated in road field. Now, when it comes to prairie, we're down to about 1 square mile of A-grade prairie that the state has preserved in the west 2/3 of the state was prairie. So it's every inch is worth money for corn and soybeans and whatever else. The railroads, by happenstance or by railroads had a federal law that they weren't to be invaded. So this soil on the railroad line has not been invaded, except to put a railroad down. But the railroad is put down in a linear fashion. So the area on the sides is original soil, hasn't been chemicalized, and we've been working for 30, 40 years to make sure we maintain that soil in its original state. We also, there's a lot of plants on it. We hope, we're not ever sure, that the state has done its job and has a species list, because there are prairie plants there, and other bodies, including university and forest preserve and the like, have been harvesting prairie plants in the last few weeks. We appreciate that. We appreciate the Department of Transportation is doing that. But really, we would like to save the soils. And that means that there's a cost involved. There's equipment out there already. There's a need to go borrow. Borrow is a term that says you take gravel and theoretically you take it back. But you borrow pit, you usually take this material and it doesn't come back. So we think that some of the areas around Urbana and the Yankee Ridge and maybe Moranic and the glacial till there would be a much more responsible road fill. And besides, we're just appalled at the thought that this unique soil, of which there's very little left, will be underneath the road so that it can be raised up 3 feet. The raising is quite legitimate because there's a bird bath there. If those of you who know it, it's Cottonwood Road, and it's near to John Deere, and it gets, when you have a 5-inch rain, you get a lot of water there. So the road has been asphalted all but that piece, and that piece will be made into a big drain. We are okay with that. But what we would like to do with the corridor itself, on the edge of the Department of Transportation easement, they have their own right-of-way, and on an adjacent easement which is being taken out of the rail trail, that both those things to be preserved. It's relatively intact. It has huge root systems on it that control erosion and things like that. So how do we work with this? I wrote a letter to the Department of Transportation, and that got to its base, and it was turned over to Region 5 headquarters in Paris, Illinois, and that is being considered, and we hope that we will have a stay of execution for a while, so we try to find a different form of landfill. So this morning I also wrote to the governor and hope that there might be some sort of control put on that site till we work out whether we can do something. We might even have to pay something towards the problem of doing it. So I have a 6-page or 7-page diatribe on the history of this situation and why we want to do what we're doing. But also I have a very short thing that goes to is already gone to the governor, and we hope that some of you folk will pull up the .gov page and write your thoughts about this. If you don't have the information you need, go to our YouTube site or give me a call. It's 351-1911, area code 217-351-1911. And you don't have to be in town to get the message. It may be you lived here, or you're concerned about the prairie ecosystem, the tallgrass prairie ecosystem, East Central Illinois, deserves to have its gene pool remained. If in the past, if we want soybeans, we went around the world collecting glycine, which is a botanical name for soybean, and we worked on that with genetics and made the crop, which you now see is very economical. It gives us our wealth. But you had to have the plant to start with. So we're looking 5 years, 1,000 years down the line. The biochemistry in some plant that we don't know about now might be a cure for something that's different. Not everyone sees at length, but that's what we would like to preserve, and we would like to encourage you to either contact the Department of Natural Resources or the Department of Transportation. Natural Resources is involved because it's involved with the trail and the greenway that's alongside the trail. And so I'm saying to the governor, these are both places where there's a heavy involvement of IDOT expertise. The Rail Banking Act, which is helping us to preserve the interim trail use, is there. It was engineered by the Congress because they thought too much railroad was being taken out. And what they did was they saw that the bicycle ways were being bought by bicycle people, and they were having some problems because railroad titles are various, and there were reversionary clauses so that they could not have contiguity for the trail. So the Rail Banking Act quiets the titles, saves the bridges, which are very expensive to replace, and it gives you enhancement money. So enhancement money is coming to this trail between Urbana and Danville, or Kickapoo State Park as it's known. It will be a Kickapoo Trail. These two corridors are parallel, and in the future, when things have settled down after remodeling, these corridor will have ambience, and it'll have genetic gene pool for scientists. It'll have opportunity for study and research, and we hope that it won't be messed over by too much modification of the soil. And certainly no soil put in the fill. That would be tremendous waste. You have to remember that already we have equipment there. We have people with jobs. We have contractors where the contract has been written in concrete. And so we're somewhat a pain in the tail. But it's deserving to realize that this is happening in other places, and we need to, first of all, be consulted. If we're written in as the initiating agency, someone should be able to say, this group of people should be contacted regarding this particular plan. And we haven't been in that kind of circuit. Part of it is because of a different philosophy of how you bring people together to work on this. And there's been musical chairs. So this is at the last minute, and unfortunately, we're probably in the way. The trees have been removed. The trees are also on prairie soil. There are trees that have invaded, and in the long run, we would like to remove those trees. A lot of them have been moved on the easement. Huge trees, some of them, they've been growing for 40 years. And so it's a lot of work to take those trees and shred them and get rid of them. And it disturbs the soil some, but we can live with that. The microorganisms are there. The quality of the soil is there. The plants are there. Even if we take out a few visible plants, there are other plants that are there. And we're hoping that really there's a cooperation between those two corridors going parallel to each other, and that there will be an ambiance of prairies. And people know very, very little about prairie. They think it's a bunch of weeds, and it is. If a weed is defined as a plant growing out of place, a prairie plant in your cornfield is a weed. But we need those that prairie for the progenitor of plants, like bundleweed perhaps for a perennial soybean, or for the biochemicals that are in it that might be for a disease that we don't know about. So that's going on, and we beg you to write, or the state gives you a box to register, and you can write a note to say that you would like to see the prairie soil not used as fill for a 1 mile segment of road just to be lifted up a logical 3 feet. It might even be a little more than that. But a lot of the people involved in having to do this work are very sympathetic. They are employed by the state to do what they do, but they also know that they're handling some of the last resources that we have that are natural resources. And so they're sympathetic with us. They've been allowing people to salvage prairie plants out of the right-of-way that belongs to the Department of Transportation traditionally, plus the easement that's alongside. Not so much has been taken out of the easement yet, and that's what we want to save. There's a lot of work to do that. Some of the plants are going to Homer Lake, where there's perhaps a new prairie. Some is going to the university. The university used to use this corridor for research and teaching, and we hope the same will happen in the future. It's a corridor that is in the planning phase now, and it'll probably take a year before the Kickapoo Trail is really engineered. But the road engineering is going on right now. The asphalting has gone all the way from Urbana to St. Joe, except for this 1 mile. And it's easy to look at the side nearby. It's less costly to look at the side nearby and say, we take this and put it on the road. So we'd like that something different to be going on there.
So again, the location Dave was talking about is Route 150 east of Urbana at, what'd you say, High Cross Road, Cottonwood Road?
Cottonwood Road is, but no, the whole 6 miles, or at least 5 miles of it, is being used for fill. So we'll go along with the grader, and they've widened the road by about a foot on each side, and that's called a batter in some circles, and it's a sort of place where you can roll off if you have to. It's a place where bicyclists are really interested in there being, instead of a 6-inch drop
shoulder.
on the shoulder, they can work.
Or a gradual soft shoulder.
And so it's moving the ditch over by just a few, about a foot. But then it's the soil to fill in the road is coming from other parts. Right. And that's what we'd like to save. It's very wet. You're sort of near to Flatville. This is the moraine and the outwash plain, and this is the flat part
very
of it.
Flat.
And so, yes, to drain it is what's usually happened. That's what's allowed us to do agriculture.
When you can.
Yes, and some of the rains that have been recent, if I go out today, it will be sloppy out there, and take photographs of some of the drainage. But what happens with some of these prairie plants have 4-foot roots, some of them have 10-foot roots. They're established. And if you're going to do something like replant prairie, the mixes that are destined in this plan are fairly simplistic. I don't know how much there is, but it's unfortunate sometimes low-bid seed is brought in from Kansas, and we want to avoid that. There are a lot of people who are expert in doing prairie restoration. The Grand Prairie Friends group, the University Committee on Natural Areas, the Forest Preserve, the Vermilion County Conservation District. These are all people that are expert in doing this, and so we're asking also that the Department of Transportation contract with the local yokels directly so that they can do it. And it might not be in 1 year, it might be over many years. And we do get the volunteers to help with doing that. And Grand Prairie Friends has just been buying extra land. They've got 141 acres in Charleston, and then the nearby 240 acres, I think it is. But this is progress, and we'd like to continue that. It's difficult because that's in competition with jobs for people who are already likely to put in seed. But there are little techniques. One of them is, for us, is to roll the ground after we've put the prairie seed in, which means that it will be hard. And we also will never use fertilizer, because the fertilizer will bring in those plants that used to be well fertilized around the badger hole, but if you fertilize 250 million acres, you get ragweed and stuff like that. So you don't use fertilizer. There's just a bunch of little techniques that we'd like to see work with the Department of Transportation and the Department of Natural Resources to leave a corridor, road corridor and a railroad corridor that will be an ambience for people who have had a prairie heritage. I think we're getting...
You've got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Well, go to your computer.
No pressure.
and send a letter to the governor, and it'll filter through. And this is only one place. You see us on South 45 working with Ameren, and you go around to Monticello and you see us working with culverts, huge walk-through culverts there. And one of those culverts was at Wildcat Creek near to Allerton Park, and it was absolutely beautiful with hoary puccoon and other plants that are the lead plant and whatnot that are really ready to be preserved. And the old culverts were dumped on top of these places. So we have a lot of gentle educating to do with contractors who sometimes come from other regions. So
the state's website is illinois.gov, and from there you can find the Department of Transportation's website. Sometimes these plans are posted. When they go out for bid, they call them TSR drawings or something obscure like that. And you'd have to fish through and find the Champaign County ones, because all the roads have code names that aren't US 150.
Yes, that's exactly
there's something
right.
else. So you got to kind of look
It takes
around.
a little bit of learning to read these cross sections and all the different contract groups. Some deal with vegetation.
There's a table of contents to help you out.
Yes,
in that plan.
and page numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
It's been Dave Monk, Prairie Monk, WEFT Champaign, 90.1 on your FM dial. And
I'm Bill Saylor, sitting in on the board. And where can we find you on YouTube?
Prairie Monk.
YouTube.com. Just Prairie Monk? No the?
You can
Maybe
do
it doesn't
either
matter.
one. It'll get Urbana Public Television will help too, and we thank Urbana Public Television for doing these sorts of things, and we are pleased that they got an award, and WEFT was involved because the Monday night bands have gotten I think it's a federal award for being interesting
Community programming?
Community programming, yes. WEFT sessions, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pleased that has happened. Jason will probably go to accept the award for it comes to Urbana, but it's been involving WEFT sessions.
We'd like to thank UPTV for their support of getting us a broader audience.